what women got out of this budget, you saw what senior citizens got, you saw what even those, unless you are earning more than 15 and less than 5 CR, except you saw what everybody else also got in this budget. But what about Gen Z? India is now the most populous country in the world. India is also now the youngest democracy in the world. What was it that this budget had to offer them? The biggest vote bank in the country, which will be keeping its eye, and in fact I'm sure kept its eye on this budget very, very closely in the run-up. So let's look at the top 5 things that according to us was a bit of a sort of giveaway for Gen Z. Number 1, lowering of income tax slabs. Now the income tax rebate under the new regime has been increased, as we just spoke about, from 5 to 7. That means your first time employees, your first salary people, Pranjal, they had a bit of a relief, right?
Oh,
so anybody who got into the workforce for the first time is feeling a little relief today.
Definitely, this is something that directly impacts the Gen Z. I think I'll go back to my office and reduce CTCs proportionately because those were revised pre-budget, decided pre-budget. But this is something that, yes, directly impacts the people who have entered their first job. And yes, I think a huge plus, something that everyone wanted, something that was overdue.
Right. Also the number of tax slabs rates which have been reduced to 5 now under the new tax regime, it's simplification as well.
Simplification. I think going forward this should reduce even more, but this is a step in the right direction.
Step in the right direction. So that's number 1 point. Let's go to the second point here, which is about financial literacy of youth, now a priority, and the Prime Minister made a very specific mention of that. He says that the Kaushal Vikas Yojana to skill lakhs of youths within the next 3 years. These are digital skills, an ecosystem he says he will be providing to ensure and align higher education courses with the standards of Industry 4.0. Another point he made was SEBI to develop and regulate education in NISM and award degrees and diplomas and certificates to boost financial literacy. This is directly related to getting jobs.
Absolutely, and I hope just some part of this financial literacy budget goes to you and I think directly, indirectly, but I think the focus was on 2 things. 1, skill enhancement, and second, self-reliance. So self-job creation rather than government subsidizing jobs. So I think this is something. Employability. This is again something we discussed pre-budget, and I think this is really important. Be it nursing colleges, be it accelerator funds, be it Skill India, a lot of steps in the right direction, because there's only so much and only so far you can take the youth on your shoulders, specifically when the number of youth is the highest in the world. It has to be skill related, and it has to be how they can stand on their own feet. So easy access to credit, seed funding, again a step in the right direction. So I think all steps in the right direction.
We'll come to seed funding in just a bit, but I want to go to point number 3, and that's really interesting. It talks about AI, artificial intelligence, to get a boost. 3 centers of excellence for AI will be set up, and government will train lakhs of youth in AI, drones, coding over the next 3 years, clearly riding the wave on global demand as well.
Oh, absolutely. And India has been known to be sort of outsourcing the IT of the world. The entire world outsources its IT requirements to India. Now when that's shifting to AI, suddenly there's this fear that what will be the future of our IT employed youngsters. So which is why upskilling them, ensuring them that they stay in compliance with what the market demands. So again, I think very, very important. It ensures that India's IT sector actually continues to grow.
It does, but I was hoping when it comes to AI, when it comes to coding, games, etc., there is also a flip side over here, right? We did a full video on Moneycontrol on Let's Talk Jobs, where we spoke about the different kind of avenues that are opening up in the gaming sector, right? There is so much demand and so few people who actually know. Are we missing a gap over there? Was gaming sector a good opportunity that has been missed?
If I take a broader perspective, I would say that the government has always, all governments historically, has always lagged the cutting edge technology. Government always sort of wakes up to what's happening 5 years, 10 years down the line.
Yeah.
And it's after a huge lag. In this case, at least I'm positive in the sense that the lag is not that much. The opportunity is not gone. So, you know, gaming, if they have woken up to AI this year, to gaming, if they wake up next year, still it would be fine. So the opportunity is not gone forever. I'm glad they are waking up to AI and things that are.
They woke up to AI but completely slept on crypto. How come there was no mention at all? And for me, that was a huge headline. No mention of blockchain. This at a time when I believe last year the biggest headline of the budget was the taxation that came on crypto.
Right.
Last 1 year, we've seen such massive adoption of blockchain by government organizations on highways, on certificates, IITs, IIMs, all developing it. This vacuum was very, very, you know, it was difficult to not notice.
You know, specifically in terms of cryptos, I think this was government's moment of saying, we told you so. So, you know, they don't want to ignite that because they're in a very good position right now. Sort of, you know, now they can look back and say, last year by introducing taxes, we protected the retail investors by discouraging further investments. So we were taking a step in the right direction. And, you know, although conceptually blockchain and crypto are two different concepts, and crypto is a very, very small part of blockchain, but for a layman, those two concepts are very, very closely related. So by invoking blockchain, they might fear that the debate around cryptos and the losses that retail investors are suffering could rise up again. They want to avoid that conversation specifically on a budget day, probably.
I actually also think there is a gap between how the government internally looks at crypto and blockchain as well. While we've seen the Prime Minister's office be very proactive, talk about how there will be adoption, we've seen RBI take a very hard stand, and then we've seen Supreme Court give some relief. So internally, I think we are not there just yet. Even the last few sessions, we did not see the bill actually be tabled in Parliament. So there's some time before regularization there takes place.
I think 30 years of liberalization, privatization, globalization, but I still think we suffer from this mindset that anything new, first the government will do for 10 years, then we'll see if we can open it for the private players. Probably that mindset still exists.
10 years, you're scaring people by saying that. 10 years, we don't know. We don't know. I saw some happen in the audience over there that don't say that. Okay, let's come to point number 4 then for Gen Z. This is ease of filing ITR, and I think this is a good one. The aim is to reduce ITR processing time from 93 days to just 16 days. Grievance redressal forum to be introduced to ease ITR filing, and a simple common income tax return form for all taxpayers to be made available soon.
I'm sure the chartered accountants are not too happy about the third point though. But yeah, I mean, again, a step in the right direction. Doesn't incentivize directly in terms of your cash tax outflow or inflow, but increases convenience, which is always good.
Which is good. I also think that a lot of the new force that gets into the job market, the first time, once they're all going to be wondering at this time, कि हमें tax तो देना नहीं है पर भरना है. You know, that's the whole mindset that the first time salaried class people actually feel, right? That you have to still file your taxes and wait for a rebate and get into the whole game.
I think, you know, more than the government trying to simplify its platform, a bigger simplification would be if their APIs are improved so that private players can build tax filing platforms in a much better and wider way, and then individuals can benefit from those private platforms and file taxes in a much easier way. So if APIs are simplified, that will in fact make it much more easier rather than these steps.
Right. And then that brings me to the last and final point, and I'm sure Pranjal will have loads to say on that. This is about increasing employability through startups and MSME sector. Now, the government has allotted 283.5 crore for the Startup India Seed Fund scheme. It has extended tax holiday for startups till March 2024. There is lots to say about that one. And then MSMEs get 9,000 crore corpus for revamping credit guarantee scheme to promote financial inclusion and employability growth. 3 points there, but first let's go to the Startup India Seed Fund scheme. What did you make of that? 283.
It's nothing. I mean, 283 crores, it's nothing. It's there for the name. The government ticked a checkbox, but it's absolutely nothing. I think one good startup would take all of that, theoretically. So it's nothing.
It's nothing, especially in the startup, in the funding winter that we're seeing right now.
It's absolutely
okay.
nothing.
Extended tax holiday for startups till March 2024. Now, tax holidays is a hugely debated subject because a lot of startups today say that we are registered, but we don't qualify. There is a certification. It's a complicated process. We did a statistic also earlier in the day where 80,000 plus startups are known in the government register. But some 400 some 400 of them, 0.5% of them actually end up getting any benefit out of this. That's worrying.
Absolutely. And I think more than that, I think the ecosystem will be fine if it's 0.5, but the ecosystem also needs to know what's the eligibility criteria and on what basis it's decided. So if transparency increases, I think automatically more startups will align themselves to what's required and will be eligible. But I think one good point here is the extension of the deadline by a year. Apart from that, earlier you could claim any 3 years for tax exemption. Now that is enhanced, that out of 10 years you could actually claim in 3 years. So your overall lifeline through which you can claim is increased. So that's slightly beneficial. But again, startups that can benefit are right now 400.
Only 400 out of 80,000. So that's another point that one must look at on how to make that process a little easier, right? To make that happen. The last point, of course, has got to do with job losses. It's got to do with employability. I'll just repeat it for the benefit of our viewers. MSMEs to get 9,000 crore corpus for revamped credit guarantee schemes to promote financial inclusion and employability growth. Your take?
This is definitely good. I think this makes it easy for the MSMEs to actually go for a loan because part of it is actually guaranteed by the government and reimbursed by the government to the lender if the MSME defaults, which means it's easier for an MSME to get credit, which directly, indirectly improves employment. So this is a good step.
All right. So this is a good step, but I want to, sort of go in a little bit more detail about employment, about job losses and layoffs, since that's the word that's really scaring a lot of Gen Z right now. And for me, again, there was a big vacuum on that. In the expectations that were sent out, Pranjal, one huge point was that what is the government doing? Any sort of safety net that can be provided for those who've been laid off, especially those who perhaps lost their jobs abroad now, were on working visas, have to come back, have families to feed, have kids to feed, and now you see what's happening. The biggest of the tech firms have laid off people. It's happening here in India and abroad as well. Disappointed or not really? Weren't really expecting something? Something government could have done?
Actually, I am happy with the approach of the government. So when such a situation arises, the government has two options. Either provide some SOPs now and provide short-term relief, and your allocated funds for the sector go down in sort of shock absorbing mechanisms, versus build a pipeline or a process through which this problem is solved in the long run. Now, what approach is government taking? One, in the last 9 years of the NDA government, one constant theme has been privatization and disinvestment, which mean the private sector and self-employment has to take the onus to employ the youth, which also means that our youth actually needs to be higher skilled. The education policy needs a reform. Credit needs to be easily available. And if credit support is needed, there are schemes like MSME credit guarantee scheme. So I think there are two focuses. How can the youth employ themselves, and how can self-employed entities, smaller entities, get access to easier credit and then give jobs to the people? And third, how do we modernize education so that our youth can actually get jobs globally? So this is a long-term fix, which I think is better.